For more on the trade, we bring in Michael Grange from Sportsnet.ca. I don't think at any point we all thought that Rudy Gay was going to be a lifetime Raptor when he came over from Memphis. But are you surprised by this deal?
The whole NBA is surprised. I'm sorry. When Rudy Gay at $19 million, $20 million for next year is on your books, there was not a market. In fact, I was told by multiple sources the Raptors had given up trying to trade Rudy Gay. So this was one of those deals that came out of left field. And I think, so in that sense, yeah, you could not have predicted this. I think it really sets the tone for the future, in the immediate future, for the Raptors.
DeRozan, Lowry, entry pass, Jonas underneath, layup, good, plus the foul. 68-55, here's Kyle, up at the rim, and Amir Johnson with a two-handed slam.
Seconds to go, tied at 103. Lowry misses the layup, but Amir Johnson doing work all season and doing work here, getting the putback off window, and that would do it, folks. The Raptors are back in the playoffs for the first time since 2007-2008. They win 105-103.
It is Sportsfeld Storytime, your monthly look back at a great or not so great, memorable or not so memorable moment in our sports fandom. We are going back to sort of the beginning of it all for the Toronto Raptors. I know we looked back a couple of months ago at when the Raptors officially had LeBron sort of become the scary monster at the end of the tunnel. The monster under the bed, the monster in the closet was LeBron, waiting for them for a number of years in a row near the end of, not the end of this little run, but sort of the end of the disappointing part of this little run. But we take it back this month to where it all started. We are looking back at the 2013-2014 Raptors, the first real heartbreak with this team, with this era of the team. The We the North banner sort of gets unveiled in this period. It's the first year of any success post Bosch. It's the first playoff appearances for Kyle Lowry and for DeMar DeRozan. And it is, of course, the big trade halfway through the year to get things done. Before we get into some specifics and before we look at some of the things about this team, Jake, as an overall, before we got into this, before you rewatched and before all the everythings, how did you remember the 2013-2014 Raptors, playoffs included?
Very fondly. This was like the first, not the first, because obviously it wasn't the first time the Raptors had something resembling success, but definitely, as you said, it was like the beginning of the modern Raptors, the winning Raptors, as we think of them today. This is the first season. They weren't quite there yet, but this is the start of like the Raptors are no longer a joke in the NBA, and the Raptors are a team to take seriously. It was the first year they won an Atlantic Division title. It was sort of, or the second year, I guess they won it, surprisingly, 2007. But it was like, and it was a surprise too. Like this season was so close to being the end of something for the Raptors and the beginning of an entire rebuild for the team, including losing Kyle Lowry. And that thankfully didn't happen. And so this team was really, this was a big team for me, and I think a big team for the city. Like this was the first year of Jurassic Park. This is the fuck Brooklyn year. Like this was the year the Raptors became sort of notable in the NBA and in Toronto.
I would be remiss if I did not mention they have not missed the playoffs since this team. This is the beginning of what would be 7 straight playoff runs. I feel safe in saying they'll do it again next year, but for now, it's 7 straight playoff runs. Yeah, to your point, sort of the disappointment they were coming off of. It's the third season of Dwayne Casey. They had gone 34-48 the year before, and 23-43 in his first season. That coming up off the back of 2 Jay Triano seasons, where I did not realize this. 2009-2010, Jay Triano went 40-42 as coach of the Toronto Raptors. How about that?
I also don't remember that at all. I remember those teams being unwatchable and bad. Oh, no. That's right. That was the year they almost made the playoffs. And I remember they were pushing for it near the end of the year. And there was a game, I want to say it was against the Warriors, where they made this furious comeback fighting for a playoff spot, and the rebound, like an offensive rebound that would have been an easy putback for the win, like went off of Bosch's hands and out of bounds. And then I think he was hurt for the rest of the year, so the playoffs didn't happen. But I remember that being like the closest they got, and then Bosch was like, I'm going to Miami because this is not for me.
After, and this is the miracle that we've been online for so long. After Bosch put on Twitter in 2010, what team should I go to, and sort of put it out to his Twitter followers, which is ridiculous, which is completely ridiculous. A ridiculous thing to do. But I'll tell you what else, and this is sneaky, and you know, in a different time where we weren't in the era of the Raptors that we are, this would not matter. This is the first season where Nick Nurse is listed as an assistant coach of the Toronto Raptors.
It's true. It's also the first full year of Masai Ujiri, who came on in May of 2013, so the end of the previous season. So this really is like the birth of the Raptors as we know them today.
So today, on behalf of Maple Leaf Sports, it gives me great honor and pride to introduce the future of this Raptors organization. The president of basketball operations and the general manager, Masai, for me, I couldn't be more thrilled that you're here based on not only your experience and your reputation, but your commitment, passion, and enthusiasm for what we need to do as an organization. So I welcome you back to Toronto. I welcome you to Maple Leaf Sports. And for me personally, I am extremely excited about being your partner in building the Raptors into an NBA championship organization. Welcome, and it's all yours.
Wow. I'm overwhelmed. I can't. I don't even know where to start. I don't have anything written, guys. I'm going to speak straight from my heart. I'm home. I came home.
Very interesting, sort of the beginning of this year. It starts off with trading Bargnani, getting out from underneath the Andrea Bargnani deal, which is, you know, of the many splendors and of the many things that we put on Masai Ujiri. To know that that was one of his first moves was Bargnani for Steve Novak, Quentin Richardson, and Marcus Camby. Camby and Richardson, of course, do not play for the Raptors team, but they also get picks in that deal. Just like, first and foremost, before we even get into the season, truly unbelievable they got anything at all for Andrea Bargnani.
I can't believe the Knicks made a trade for Andrea Bargnani. Of all people. I mean, come on. He's a good player and all, but he can't stay healthy. It's ridiculous, man. This team is ridiculous. I just don't understand what they're doing. I mean, why would you make this trade? Toronto wanted to get rid of him, and they give up a first-round draft pick in 2016. You know what's going to happen? That season, the Knicks are going to win like 15 games, and you know what? They're all of a sudden getting rewarded the #1 pick, and Toronto's going to have it. It's so ridiculous. Enough with this crap. I can't take it. Why would you go out and get another soft, injury-prone power forward? We already have a guy on our roster doing that, making $20 million. We already have a useless power forward.
I remember working, it was draft night, I think, when they traded him, and I was on shift at the Score, and Bargnani being traded was like a celebration because he had, and like the fact they not only got like any players, they got like 3 picks in that deal, 2 seconds and a first. The first, of course, becoming Jakob Poeltl, who of course would later be traded for Kawhi Leonard, which is a crazy sentence in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yes, truly amazing. The other picks, you know, for the Blakes out there, the wannabe Blakes out there, it was Xavier Thames taken with the 2014 second, and Jonah Bolden taken with the 2017 second that they got in that deal. Not that it matters, but you know, if you needed to know. And all like about only Bargnani the other way. How does a deal like that? Oh my goodness, how does that possibly happen? That is truly unbelievable.
Not only was that deal obviously important in terms of the Poeltl to Kawhi connotations, but potentially even more important because that deal made James Dolan extremely wary of trading with Masai Ujiri, which means that a trade in December of 2013 that was supposed to send Kyle Lowry to the Knicks fell through. Dolan has said that it's because he didn't want to give up a first-round pick, but scuttlebutt is more that he was afraid of getting fleeced again, which pretty hilarious in retrospect. I didn't know this until I was looking into this today, but apparently that Kyle Lowry trade would have been Meta World Peace, Iman Shumpert, and a first-round pick.
Well, if it helps at all, the 2018 first would have been pretty good.
It's true.
This Raptors season is really I almost want to call it a tale of 2 years, but it's sort of a tale of a quarter of a year and then a total change. They get off like they're not super terrible. They're 6-7 on November 22nd, and then the wheels really fall off. They lose to Brooklyn, they lose to Miami, they get smacked by Denver. They lose again to Golden State, and then they lose on December 6th to Phoenix to fall to 6-12. Just clearly not working. Rudy Gay really not. The Rudy Gay and DeMar DeRozan sort of swing really not working, as you have two of the very same type of players, mid-range guys, offensive players who do not play defense. We all know that, of course, ends up being the calling card of the franchise is their elevated defense. So that is the tipping point for this franchise, I will say. December 6th, as I said, they lose 107-97 to the Suns. They fall to 6-12, and 2 days later, it's the Rudy Gay trade. They trade Rudy Gay, Quincy Acey, and Aaron Gray to the Kings for John Solomons, Grievous Vasquez, Patrick Patterson, and Chuck Hayes. Even knowing what we know now, knowing that helps lead the turnaround of the Raptors, it is funny to look at, like, they don't get anybody that is really all that important to their road. I guess Patterson is fairly important, and I guess at this stage, Grievous is a serviceable backup. He plays 60 games, and we had heard a million times the guy that formerly led the league in assists, but it's funny that they're not immediate, like, impact the rotation guys. And of course that was intentional.
Yeah, I remember when this trade happened, I had talked myself into John Salmons being like a really good get because he was 2 years off of averaging 14 points a game in Milwaukee. And like, but I don't think I realized at the time that John Salmons had been in the league since 2002, which I also don't think I realized until just now. He was like a 15, 18 point a game guy in the late 2000s, but obviously 5 years later, he was well past his prime. But yeah, I remember it kind of just felt like a collection of guys. Like it definitely did. It felt like we needed to get rid of Rudy Gay because it wasn't working, and fair enough. But I don't think there was any expectation obviously there's no expectation that it would become what it did, but there was really no expectation that it was going to work with these guys.
Excellently said. I was not thinking, let's talk ourselves into John Solomons. I was thinking we are going to get Andrew Wiggins. That was my...
That's right. You're right.
That is what I thought was going to happen. But no, those Raptors, that night, that very same night of the trade, a 9-man team, not even able to do a full line change of subs, led by Amir Johnson, who had 32 and 10, would beat Kobe and the Lakers 106-94. They put that back as a galvanizing game. The players that played that night are ridiculous that this team beat the Lakers. Not that the Lakers were good at the time, but Lowry, DeMar, Landry Fields, Jonas Valanciunas, Steve Novak, Terrence Ross, and Julian Stone, who I believe they had just signed not long. They signed him on September 19th, so a guy that you have never heard of before or since, that only played 23 games 5 years after this. Really, really incredible. That team that was the beginning mark, I think, of them realizing not that the plan was to build around Gay and DeRozan, but to build around Lowry and DeRozan, and to continue. This is a theme we see with this team, is to continue be putting more and more on Lowry's plate.
And that was like a question at this time too, because the whole narrative around Lowry at this time was that he was uncoachable. He was kind of out of shape. He and Dwayne Casey were butting heads, and like they couldn't really get along. And like every narrative around Kyle, literally up until I guess like February of this season, maybe even up till the playoffs, was like he's not the guy for this team, which is crazy to think now that he is the greatest player in franchise history and probably a Hall of Famer.
And that will continue on for years, though.
For sure. But this was like, that was just like he doesn't show up in the big moments. This was like, get this guy out of Toronto. They almost traded him for Meta World Peace in 2013. Like, that's not.
The win over the Lakers was sort of a beginning of things to come. They win 10 of their next 12. That takes them from 6-12 all the way to 16-14. Just a crazy turnaround that puts them in the lead in the division. They do not relinquish the lead at any point. They finish the regular season unbelievable, from 6-12 to 48-34. They win the Atlantic, and they're third in the East behind the Pacers and the Heat. Sort of crazy. The East was really bad. Part of this going back.
Oh my God, so bad.
Part of this going back is like realizing, like, man, East was really like, no wonder LeBron moonwalked to the finals every year. There was nothing in the way.
We'll talk about this when we kind of briefly touch on the next season, but I couldn't, like, the 2015 Raptors team was pretty bad and still won the Atlantic by 9 games.
Unbelievable.
The East was terrible.
They finished March and April 16-8. They are red hot, and that sends them into a playoff series. Their first playoff series in 5 years. Not since 2007-2008 had they made the playoffs, when they played Orlando, pardon me, in a first-round series.
The forgotten Raptors playoff appearance.
I was at the final game of that playoff series. Did not feel great.
I remember I was in residence when that playoff series was going, and I had like kind of been keeping my sports fandom under wraps a little bit. A, because there was nothing in Toronto to be excited about, and B, because I was so like unsure of like who I was as a person. I didn't want to like sports too much, or else people wouldn't think I was cool. And I remember my friend Shirley and I, who was also from Toronto, watching those Raptors Magic playoff games in our residence and like screaming at the TV, and people being like, what is happening to Jake? What's going on? But it is funny though how that playoff series is just like, when we talk about Raptors playoff appearances, that one never comes up.
That was a day game that day they got eliminated.
That was a lot of day games in that series.
Well, that is Raptors until they win the title. They are
That's
the day
true.
Game. Anyway, that sets them up with a first-round matchup against Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Joe Johnson, and the Brooklyn Nets. We will talk about that in the next episode of Sportsfeld Storytime.